Hello everyone. Today's story I wanted to do Superworm by Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler. Superworm. Superworm is super long. Superworm is super strong. Watch him wriggle, see him squirm. Hip, hip, hooray for Superworm. Help! Disaster! Baby Toad has hopped onto a major road. Quick, whatever can we do? Look, a Superworm lasso. The bees are feeling bored today. They need a nice new game to play. Cheer up, bees. No need to mope. It's Superworm, the skipping rope. Beetle's falling in the well. Is he drowning? Who can tell? Not to panic. All is fine. It's Superworm, the fishing line. Then toads and beetles, bees and bugs, brother snails and sister slugs, uncle ant and earwig aunt, clap and cheer and chant this chant. Superworm is super long, Superworm is super strong. Watch him wiggle, see him squirm. Hip, hip, hooray for Superworm. The chant is carried on the air to wizard lizard in his lair. He mutters in his servant's ear, "Find that worm and bring him here." The servant crow is black and grim. Everyone is scared of him. They all let out a fearful shriek to see their hero in his beak. Now Wizard waves his magic flower. "Now, Superworm, you're in my power, and you must tunnel, writhe and coil to find me treasure in the soil." Superworm is very cross to have a lizard for his boss, but when he tries to slink away, the wizard's magic makes him stay. For days he tunnels, twists and winds, but all the treasure that he finds is 2 small buttons and half a cork, a toffee and a plastic fork. The lizard flicks an angry tail. "Have one last try, and if you fail to find that treasure down below, I'll feed you to my hungry crow." The crow is flapping through the night. Everyone looks up in fright. They see him perched upon an oak and listen to his dreadful croak. "Ah! Superworm is good to eat. Superworm's a special treat. He'll be juicy, fat and firm. Hip, hip, hooray for Superworm." Action, quickly, at the double. Superworm's in frightful trouble. We must help him if we can. We must hatch a cunning plan. The garden creatures leave their home, carrying a honeycomb. They jump and fly and crawl and creep, and find the lizard fast asleep. They chew the petals off his flower to rob him of his magic power. The caterpillars fetch some leaves, whilst busily the spider weaves. The web is strong, the web is tough, the web is plenty big enough. The wizard waits. "This isn't funny. I'm wrapped in leaves and stuck with honey." Then up the bees and beetles fly and lift the web into the sky. "This is the place!" and bang, crash, thump! The wizard's in the rubbish to dump. And now from somewhere underground there comes a distant rumbling sound. The earth begins to heave, and then Superworm is back again. Superworm the swing, Superworm the slide, the hula hoop, the fairground ride, Superworm the belt, the hat, the crane, the train, the acrobat. Then toads and beetles, bees and slugs, brother snails and sister bugs, uncle ant and earwig aunt, clap and cheer and chant this chant. Superworm is super long, Superworm is super strong. Watch him wiggle, see him squirm. Hip hip, hooray for Superworm. And that's the end. It's quite a short one today, but I wanted to talk to you about what I wanted you to do this week for our English. Your job is to write your own adventure for Superworm. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but in that book there's lots of rhyming words. You don't need to use rhyming words in yours, but what I want you to try and use is some words to extend your sentences. That means to make them longer. I'll show you what I mean on my board. I've written some extending words that you might want to use, some joining words. And, so, but, because. I've also written the sentence on my board. Superworm jumped up and grabbed the branch. I could have written that as two sentences. I could have written Superworm jumped up, full stop. Superworm grabbed the branch, full stop. But there's two reasons why I wouldn't do that. One, I like to try and start my sentences with different words if I can. I don't want to just use Superworm in every sentence. And number two is it makes your writing more interesting to read if you do lots of different types of sentences, which is why we like to try and use joining words. Now, if you can, have a go at using and in your books. If you'd like to test yourself and give yourself a little bit of a challenge, see if you can use some of the others. But you've got to be careful when you try and use joining words. I'll show you what I mean. I used and. I'm going to take and out, and I'm going to see if I can use a different word and see if it makes sense. I'll stop the video so you don't have to watch me write on my board. Superworm jumped up but grabbed the branch. It still makes sense, but it sounds a little bit weird. And was a much better choice for the word that I used. If I wanted to use but, I could have used it like this. So I've had to change my sentence a little so that it makes more sense. Superworm jumped up but missed the branch. You would usually use but if it's something the character didn't expect. So Superworm had jumped up, tried to grab the branch, but he missed it. So I used but to show that it was something that Superworm didn't expect. Superworm jumped up, but missed the branch. So be careful. If you do want to challenge yourself and use some of the different joining words, be careful about which ones you use. Say your sentence out loud before you write it and see if it sounds right. If it sounds right, it probably is. And then we're ready to write it. Okay, I can't wait to read your stories. Again, your job is to write your own Superworm adventure. Where could you send him? What could he get up to? Is he going to save somebody, or will he need saving? I can't wait to read your stories, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye, Dancers and Bears. Have fun.